impacted our lives in so many ways, in ways we're not even aware of yet. And this overwhelming amount of uncertainty can be very scary, and it impacts our mental health. There we go. So this first slide just kind of reviews the guidelines for staying safe during COVID. I would imagine all of us are fairly aware of the guidelines for individuals who are at risk, and these can vary from county to county and state to state. Although these guidelines and restrictions are in place to help keep us safe, they can impact us negatively. These restrictions force us into isolation, restricts our physical contact with others, that makes it harder for us to stay positive when we're not able to see the people we care about or do the things that make us happy. I mean, basically, saving our physical health is impacting our mental health. But there are things that we can do to kind of help ourselves and to take care of ourselves. Before we move on, I do want to highlight the bolded section. To avoid contact with someone who's sick. If you have lupus, just assume you're at an increased risk. It's perfectly reasonable to let someone know you have a compromised immune system and ask them to put on a mask or to use hand sanitizer if they're not already doing so. Another important thing, just as a reminder, is that don't ever delay getting emergency care or a medical condition because of COVID. Emergency departments have contingency infection prevention plans to protect you from getting COVID if you need care. So this is from the CDC, and it talks about how pandemics can be stressful for individuals, that the fear and anxiety about a new disease, and it can be overwhelming and cause strong emotions in adults and children. Public health actions such as social distancing can make us feel isolated, lonely, and increase our stress and anxiety. However, these are necessary to reduce the spread of COVID. So as I was saying, protecting our physical health is hurting our mental health. So some common feelings that you could experience during the pandemic. How we all respond to stress can depend on our backgrounds. I mean, there's so many different factors that come into play. It's our social support, it's our financial, it's our health, it's emotional background, community. All of these different things can play into how we react to some of the things we're experiencing. A lot of people feel increased anxiety and worry and fear related to things like their own health status. How are they going to take care of themselves during this pandemic? What if you have to take off work? Challenges just trying to secure groceries or medications. The frustration that's related to the uncertainty of how long is this going to last? How long are we going to be under these types of restrictions? There's a lot of loneliness that's associated. You feel very cut off, and also just plain boredom and being frustrated with some of those pieces. It's a lot to really kind of take on. So some of the common symptoms of depression and anxiety are listed here. And I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you that I experienced many of these because of my lupus diagnosis. The question really kind of comes down to, how do you know if you need help? And we'll discuss that a little bit later in the presentation, but just remember, it's okay to not be okay. It's when it starts really impacting your everyday functioning in life that it becomes an issue. Mental Health of America, I don't see the link on here and I apologize, but Mental Health of America does offer mental health screening tools. And although they are not, it does not mean you have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety if you use one of those tools, but it's a great way to start that conversation with a doctor. So when you're caring for yourself, where do you start? We start right back at the basics. Eating healthy meals, making sure we're staying hydrated, not using alcohol. That if you are using alcohol, you really need to have that conversation with your doctor to make sure that it is okay to use alcohol with your medication regimen for lupus. Bathing is another one. It can take a lot of energy and motivation to get up and take a shower. It's recommended that a minimum of two times a week a person should be bathing. So basically what I've learned is that dry shampoo does not solve everything. So we do need to make sure we're bathing at least twice a week. Another piece is medication compliance, making sure that you are taking the medication that is prescribed to you and how it's prescribed to you. Really seeing if you can even get an extra 30-day supply so you have that extra medication on hand if you are not able to get out and get some more. And don't delay treatments. I have movement on here. Movement, what I mean by movement is kind of like exercise. I don't like the word exercise. It sounds like a lot of work to me. So I break down movement or break down exercise into movements. It sounds less intimidating, I think. And so it's just kind of thinking about that in a different way. So as far as movements, like getting up and going to get a drink myself instead of asking my husband to do it, or going out and getting the mail instead of asking my husband to do it. Those little things is getting exercise into your system and getting that movement piece in. So there's a lot of different ways we can increase our movement, even if we're not doing an exercise routine. Sleep habits. So sleep hygiene, that's really about developing a bedtime ritual, such as getting up and going to bed at the same time, having a routine when you go to bed, like washing your face, brushing your teeth, taking your medications, whatever may come up, or whatever kind of works for you. Also, with sleep hygiene, we also want to talk about the sleeping environment. Sleeping with the TV on and playing with your phone before you go to bed can make it more difficult to go to sleep. So it's best to try to avoid TV and phones or electronics right before you're going to bed. I also have safety on here, and this one's kind of tricky right now because it's different for everybody and we can't compare ourselves to other people. So what I mean by safety is just, where are you comfortable about keeping yourself safe and healthy? So some people are comfortable right now to go out to dinner. Some are comfortable going to a grocery store. I have not been to a grocery store. I feel like there would be more germs at a grocery store. I have gone out to dinner, but we go at 4 when the restaurant opens at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. So there aren't people there. They've just cleaned down the restaurant. So I feel a little bit safer in that environment. But you have to stick with what makes you comfortable. The only caveat to all of that is that doing kind of a self-check as to why you're isolating. Are you isolating because of the pandemic recommendations, or are you isolating because you have depression symptoms? So if it is depression symptoms, you may need to think about getting some help, and we'll talk about that in a few slides coming up. So self-care is a priority. I talk about self-care a lot, even in the support group. And although I talk about it a lot, it's a priority, and I'm not always good about following or practicing what I'm preaching. It's a hard thing to do sometimes. I don't know about anyone else, but I do start to panic when I see my phone is in single digits. I start thinking, where's the charger? Is this phone going to die before I get off this call? I'd like to think that I don't do this, but I know I'm guilty of it. This is just a good way to remind myself that I need to take care of myself. Frequently, I let other people's needs, get in the way of taking care of my own needs. I move my needs to the end of the list. So I'm willing and panicking over getting my phone recharged, but unfortunately, self-care recharging myself isn't always a priority. I did add a quote onto this one. That's Wayne Dyer quote: "Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change." So how to kind of take care of you. Nothing on this list should surprise anybody, but it can be used to kind of help guide you to a more positive outlook, and kind of focusing on these things instead of focusing on like health limitations, such as, finding a purpose. What motivates you? Do you have what gets you out of bed in the morning? What kind of ritual do you have? For me, I always know I have to get out of bed to feed my cats. They are going to drive me nuts until I get out of bed and just finally feed them. So I know that's going to get me out of bed in the morning. Expressing gratitude, reaching out to others, checking on your neighbors, asking others for help. I know personally, I always say I don't want to be a burden on others. Therefore, I don't want to ask somebody to go to the store for me. But if the situation was reversed, I would do it for my neighbor in a heartbeat. I would help my neighbor with whatever they needed help with. And the thing is that people want to help others, but they seldom know how to really do it. Finding the good in a situation. So looking at the positive side of things. I think there's a lot of things that we can do, a lot of things in our situations that can be positive. Sometimes it's hard to see it, but by using self-talk and things like that, you can kind of help change that perspective some. Getting a support system, a network built up, using different channels during COVID to be able to connect with people, using Facebook, driveway social distancing. My girlfriend had a bunch of people over and everyone sat in the end of her cul-de-sac and hung out. Just being creative on how you can socialize with other people. So video chats, online events, groups. It is okay to set boundaries. Don't let people pressure you into doing things you're not comfortable with, just kind of like we were talking about with the safety piece of it. Don't feel bad that you aren't comfortable going out to dinner or to an event. You need to do what's best for you, your family, and your health. Just because it's okay with others does not mean it has to be okay for you. Knowing your sources of stress. Once you have a kind of an idea of what is stressing you out, you can work on a plan to kind of help decrease the stress. One of the things right now that is, I think, very challenging for all of us is the news in regards to the COVID pandemic, in regards to politics and the election. And a lot of it's really negative. When you turn on the news and see some of the broadcasts in regards to COVID, they're always focusing on how many people have died. And very seldom do you get to hear anything positive about what's going on. So I recommend that individuals limit the amount of exposure they have to news. I personally don't watch it. I may watch like local news and get kind of an overview of what's happening. But I had to kind of start limiting that because it was very upsetting to see every day how many people had died and kind of getting caught up in it. Advocating for yourself. And this is a big one. Asking others to wear masks when you're going to the doctor's office, asking for video visits or phone appointments if you're not comfortable going into the office. Just speak up when you have concerns and don't be afraid to advocate for your health and safety. You know, self-care is not a selfish activity. It is needed for survival. So these are some examples of how you can manage stress. So once again, I don't think these are going to be anything new to anyone, but kind of thinking about them in a different way. You know, if you read a book, one of the things I have done since COVID started is I've always been a reader, but now I'm part of an online book club. So that kind of reinforces that social connection when I'm not able to have that social connection in the normal ways I was having it before COVID. Finding new ways to kind of reach out to people. My husband actually is not a phone person, was kind of sick of talking to his mom on the phone all the time. So he started taking pictures of the meals he made for me each night. And so he would send those pictures to our moms. And that started back in March, and they're still doing it. I mean, they have developed such a really neat aspect to the relationship because of this, which is really cool to see happen. My mom, in fact, called him or texted him a few weeks ago and asked him if he was still feeding me because she hadn't received any text picture or received any pictures. So there's different ways that we can make those connections. You know, we mentioned earlier about just using video chats instead of just talking on the phone. For me, going out in nature is a huge thing for me. It's kind of a way for me to disconnect and unplug. I like it when I'm somewhere where no one can call me, reach me by email. They just don't have access to me for a few days. And that's really a great way for me personally to recharge. So this is mindfulness. These are just some examples. Whether you use meditation, yoga, prayer, focusing your attention on the present moment instead of just kind of focusing on the uncertain future and some of those things that can cause increased anxiety, we can help manage our stress. So I'm going to go over a few of these options that I find very useful. So deep breathing exercises. You know, an easy way to just do those in the moment is to take a deep breath in to the count of 6 and then exhale to the count of 6. And just by doing that, you can kind of reconnect to the moment and kind of calm yourself a little bit. Creating rituals. I mentioned that, you know, something that gets me out of bed in the morning is feeding my cat. But a ritual I have every morning with my cat is that when my alarm goes off and I hit snooze, the cat comes and gets in bed and lays with me. And so I spend the next probably 10 minutes or so really focusing on like petting my cat and just spending time in the moment with him. And so it's a really nice way to start my morning. Another one that's on here that I like is the head to toe relaxation. Basically, you start with the top of your head and kind of relax your muscles down to your toes. So thinking about like, okay, my temples, you know, kind of relaxing that, relaxing your jaw muscles, relaxing your shoulders. Are your stomach muscles clenched? Kind of relaxing that and going all the way down to your toes. For me personally, I tend to kind of tense my shoulders and clench my teeth. So as I'm going through these different steps, I have to keep in check that I haven't, you know, although I've moved to my stomach or my legs or something, I have to go back and still make sure that I haven't reclenched my teeth. So it's something I have to really focus on. It's something that I use a lot of times at bedtime because it helps my brain to focus on myself in the moment instead of being overloaded from the thoughts of being overloaded with thoughts from the day. The beauty of something like head to toe relaxation or the breathing exercises is that they can be done at any time. So sitting at work, sitting in traffic, just anytime you are feeling that stress and need to kind of reconnect to the moment. So positive self-talk. We kind of mentioned this earlier as a way to kind of cope with bringing more, I've worded that wrong. Basically, how to use self-talk to be a motivator and create more positive experiences. So self-talk is a powerful motivator. You can use it to remind yourself about being strong, doing the right thing, knowing when to stay home and knowing when to go out. You know, with positive self-talk, you can really kind of start to see the changes in your life as you continue to use it. This is another favorite quote of mine from Audrey Hepburn. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible. So at a previous job, I did have this quote on my office wall, and I did it on purpose because I wanted a reminder of my personal strength. The challenge with encouragement and positivity that I think we face as lupus patients is that we have to also listen to our body. And I think a lot of things are possible and there's a lot of things we can do, but we have to find a creative route to get there. In my early 20s, all my friends were graduating from college and moving on and doing things. And I really didn't think I'd ever finish school. I did finish school, but it happened 10 years after they had finished school. But I finished it. I got to the end goal. I just had to take a different route. I had to listen to my body and go slow. So embracing technology. So there are a lot of apps, more than ever right now, to find mental health care online. They can help with mild depression or anxiety symptoms. They have guided meditation. Some of them even have story times where it's basically someone's reading a book to you, like before you would go to bed. It has mindfulness, relaxation. You can find education and quizzes. Excuse me, sorry, I had to get a drink. Most of these can even help you find a therapist in your area and have links to like online support groups. Most of these apps are free, but some do have a small fee associated with it, and usually it's like a kind of like $20 for the year type situation. But I want to really stress that these apps, they are not a substitute for therapeutic professional mental health therapy. These apps are great for in the moment relaxation and like mild depression symptoms. If you do have a therapist, I would advise speaking to them and seeing if they have an app that maybe they've used or an app that they prefer that can kind of help work with the therapy you're receiving while you like in the therapy office. Right now, many organizations are doing online meetings and support groups just like this. The Lupus Foundation is doing their monthly support groups on a go-to meeting just like this. They are on, I believe it's the second Thursday of the month, and then I facilitate one on the fourth Wednesday of the month. But I do know that NAMI and Mental Health America are also doing support groups for not just for patients struggling with depression and anxiety, but even for the caregivers. And they're even doing some educational workshops just to kind of understand some of the diagnosis and struggles that people are having during COVID. And like I said, most of them are set up just like this meeting is, like with GoToMeeting, WebEx, or Zoom. So when to get help. So all of these symptoms can be a sign of increased depression and anxiety. You know, crying spells, worrying excessively, losing interest in things that would previously make you happy. Some of these symptoms can also be symptoms of lupus. So we need to remember that we know our bodies and we need to be aware. Are these new symptoms? Are these normal symptoms for me? Because I know it for me, it's not uncommon if I'm having bouts of nausea and I don't really want to eat for a few days or something along those lines. So it's really knowing your body and listening to your body. The other piece of this is also how it's impacting your daily life. So are these symptoms impacting the things that you would normally be doing? And if so, you need to contact your physician. Especially if these symptoms are new symptoms or unusual symptoms, you need to contact your physician if they're lasting for more than a couple of days. One thing I really want to speak to on here with this is just if you are feeling overwhelmed with emotion, such as sadness, depression, anxiety, and you feel like you're going to harm yourself or someone else, you need to call 911, go to the emergency room, or reach out and talk to someone at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I make this caveat because it is an important topic to discuss. You are not in this alone, and we are all here to support one another. There are a variety of helplines that you can utilize when you're struggling. So I have up on this slide, I have several hotlines that can be easily used, including some that do text messages that offer anonymous free counseling. You can also reach out to the Lupus Foundation for support. And just a reminder again, I know that I mentioned the lupus support groups, which occur twice a month. And there's also going to be an educational webinar on Saturday, September 26th. And that is with myself, Dr. Kim, and I think it's Angie Drake. She's a nurse educator that's going to really discuss some of the resources that we have available. And that's really the end of my presentation. I wanted to make sure we left plenty of times for questions and being able to help support you with whatever questions or concerns, issues you want to discuss. So Becca, how do we want to?
Yeah, so I'm looking here, and we didn't have any questions during on the chat line, but I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. And so if you don't want to be speaking right now, go ahead and maybe not. Okay, so I'm about to unmute everyone, and then if you have a question, just go ahead and ask. Do we have any questions?
very good presentation. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It is definitely something I'm passionate about.
People want us. They want to know that there is going to be what is in the development that we have to define something, really understand that as much as they expect there's a problem, they need to offer people.
If no one has questions, I encourage you to join the support group.
I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody again. So yeah, if you have questions, just go ahead and put that here in the chat box. And we'll try to get those questions to you. I will send an email out to you with a copy of the slides and then a short survey so that you'll see that tomorrow. And again, we do have several programs. You can go to our website at lupus.org/heartland. And we do have the education webinar that is September 26th. We also have something that we just put out yesterday. And so we're doing a series on pediatrics and lupus. And so if parents, the first series is on September 24th. So I think there's going to be 4 different workshops, 3 or 4 workshops. The first one is about what to expect. And that's for any parents who have children that are living with lupus. And it's kind of sort of like what it's all about and things to expect. And that's on September 24th. So registration is open for that as well. Again, you can go to lupus.org/heartland to register. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to let you all know too that the Walk to End Lupus Now has gone virtual this year, and we will all be celebrating on 10/10/20. And so we really need your help. So get on the site, register if you haven't already, create your teams. We've got a lot of exciting things for you, and let us know if you can help. If we can help you with anything. And I really appreciate Bree coming out tonight and doing this for us. I don't see any more questions right now. Again, you can always send them to us.
Becca?
Yeah.
Jeannie asked a question. She said that reaching out to people she hasn't connected to in a while is very gratifying.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
She hesitates when it's been too long, and how can she kind of get over that hesitation? I'm not sure that there's an easy answer to that, but I always try and think about it in the reverse. So like I said, that people want to help other people, but don't always know how to do it. So if my friend reached out to me after not talking to me for several months, how would I feel? Probably just happy to be talking to them again.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of frame that a little bit differently can sometimes help us with those hesitations and things like that, to kind of look at it a little bit more positively. I felt horrible when a friend had to drive me home from something. And, first thing out of my husband's mouth, of course, he throws my own words back in my face, but he's like, you would do it for her in a heartbeat. You wouldn't hesitate. If she needed you, you'd be there. But her doing something for me, I couldn't see it that way. So I have to really kind of stop and focus on that.
Thank you.
We're all in this together. We're all trying to navigate COVID, our illness, and just there are so many things to have to juggle right now, and just knowing that if you're having problems, you know that there are other people out there that are having those same problems, and we just offer grace to one another. Just, there's a lot of people I want to reach out to, and I think, and I think about them like at 10 o'clock at night. I can't call them now, but people, people know that there's things going on. So don't hesitate to reach out, do it, tell them you're late, tell them, that there's, that they're going through things just like you are, but that they're important to you. Yeah.
Well, and one of the ways that I had kind of reached out to individuals, I live on a street where everyone in the subdivision except for our house, everyone is retired, and they're all at a higher risk, in the high risk category. So I actually just wrote out note cards and said, hey, if you need something, my husband does go to the grocery store every couple of weeks. He can pick something up for you. And then made sure they all had my phone number and my husband's phone number if they needed anything. I didn't have to call them and talk to them for any extended amount of time. And what made me think of it was when Becca said she thinks about people at like 10 o'clock at night or something, because that's when this idea came to me, and I couldn't sleep. So I went ahead and started writing little notes to my neighbors. So there are ways to kind of creative ways to be able to reach out to people. It doesn't have to be a phone call or something like that. Another question was just kind of expanding on how can you appreciate yourself. And I'm very big on celebrating the successes, even if they're little successes. When you're having a lupus flare and you're struggling to get out of bed, congratulate yourself that you got up, you took a shower, and you brushed your teeth today, because when you're in a lupus flare, those are really hard things to do sometimes. Really kind of celebrating those little pieces. The fact that I've been working quite a bit lately, and I need to appreciate the fact and appreciate myself that I am doing a good job. I am doing this stuff where instead of focusing on the stress pieces of my job, I need to focus on the things that I am doing well. It's very easy to focus on our negative thought process, but we need to try and change that and do what we can to work off of our strengths. We all hate that question. So what would you say is your strength? I have to ask that question in social work all the time. And it's a hard thing to kind of answer. But we all have strengths and we need to use them. Does that kind of help answer that question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bree. I appreciate that a lot, what you said. And I just wanted to say that for us, the small things matter so much more, and it's hard to remember that sometimes. Because we're really physically compromised. So for us to be able to go outside to get the mail or take a short walk, for me anyway, that's a big day, a big deal. And I usually think, well, that wasn't much compared to this person, but it's a lot for me. And I just have to remember, and maybe it applies to some others, that what's small for the world we were in before we got sick is really big for the world we're in now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's more acceptable to kind of celebrate those little successes right now because of everything going on. Whereas before it seemed kind of silly, but people are just looking at things a little bit differently now since COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so I do think that is really helpful for all of us to be able to kind of have a different perspective on things.
Yes, because our worlds are more connected in a way, in the sense that we're all in the same boat.
Yep.
But our perspectives can be very microscopic on a moment-to-moment basis.
Absolutely. You know, even thinking about, you know, like this presentation, for example, I get very anxious when I do a presentation because I do know that I struggle with brain fog and finding the right words and all of those pieces that come with lupus. But I tried to focus on the fact that I just did a presentation. I put it together and I spoke to the information rather than focusing on, well, I stumbled over that section. So it's really just changing those little thoughts to be able to see the positives in what we're doing in our everyday lives.
Well, this whole thing has been very helpful, as are the support groups. They're immensely helpful. The self-care piece of it I carry with me, even though I may not follow through with it. I know that I need to, and I do it the next day or make it a priority. So it just means so much for the help and support from you and others who live with this illness when I know virtually no one else in my area who has it. So it's huge. Thank you.
Claire had asked if we had any support groups for teenagers with lupus. The Heartland chapter does not have one specifically for teens. I mean, teens are definitely welcome to the support groups that we have, and there's no reason that you shouldn't feel like you can attend those. That you definitely can. Lupus Connect, if you go there, they do have several groups, and they are age appropriate. And I know that they do have a group specifically for teens. So you can go to Lupus Connect. That's a really good forum.
And I have never attended the support group that's on the second Thursday of the month, but I know that in the support group that we do at the fourth Wednesday of the month, you know, it kind of is, Jeannie was talking, it is a lot, we talk a lot about just self-care, and a lot of those pieces apply to teens as well as adults. They're just basic things that we need to do to take care of ourselves in general. Everybody always laughs at me when I talk about like bathing and stuff as being a big piece of self-care, but it's so huge and no one ever wants to talk about it.
It's huge.
No one wants to admit that they haven't taken a shower in a few days. So, you know, really having a place that you can talk about those things and kind of normalizing some of the things that you are experiencing, whether it's as an adult or as a teenager. I think it's very, the support group can really help you find kind of some normal pieces of your symptoms, I guess, normalize some of those thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah.
Are there any support groups in St. Charles?
We right now we do not have any in-person groups, that just because of COVID and the vulnerability of everyone. So right now we're not having any in-person groups. They're just online. So anyone is welcome. It doesn't matter where you live. So
How do you go to a group?
2 different times, one you know, at the beginning of the month and one at the end of the month.
Well, what is Lupus Connect?
Lupus Connect is a 24/7 kind of like a chat type room, but it's more of a forum. But you can sign up and there's somebody there. There's someone who is monitoring all the time. So it's just kind of like an online support, but like a chat. Does that make sense? Like you're
just somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I think it's really important you're your network of friends and family as well. And my network of family is not as strong as I would like it to be, but my network of friends is huge. And I'm a very positive person. Actually, I have lupus and I'm an amputee and have a prosthetic. And just walking in the house is a huge deal for me. And I take all the little things and I keep them positive. I've never been negative. And I know that's hard for other people sometimes, but I think it helps your mental status, and it's like, for me, it's the only way to live. So.
Well, I think that network is super important. And I hear you on the family piece. I have a very small family. There isn't a ton of support. Several of them are children. So, I mean, it's just a very small family. And I really appreciate the friends that I have in my life. And I kind of think about that as basically my friends are the family I got to choose.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky to have them.
And we have, those of us with small families have more, perhaps, I don't know about everybody, but I find lately, and I have a small family, that it gives me more time for the friends that I have who support me so much over the years. So I really haven't thought of that blessing, but it is really a big deal to be able to listen to other people and be available when they need you or they don't know they need you, just to be able to reach out a little more than I might if I had, for example, a spouse or kids of my own. So
yeah, I have a friend, if I don't respond to her text message within like 24 to 48 hours, she's either sending a message to my husband or my mom to check on me.
oh, that's nice.
But it's kind of become a joke over the years. But even if I don't want to talk to her and I'm in a bad mood or I'm in a flare or I don't feel good, just knowing that there's somebody that's worried about how I'm doing makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think we all need somebody, or have somebody like that, or somebody who is almost like a family member in that way, because sometimes our families really are busy with other things they can't finish, like whatever job or baby being sick. So it's really good to have those friends who care as much as family. I wanted to thank the person, well, everyone, but the person who said she's never been negative. I'm not exactly the opposite, but I'm more negative, even though I have a lot of good things in my life. I tend to look at the negative because I like things to be just right, which is not the best trait. But thank you for saying what you did. That made me think more positively right then.
Good, I'm glad. I have to say that I'm so positive, I'm actually moving from St. Louis to Las Vegas, Nevada. And I live in St. Louis all by myself. My family's thousands of miles away in California and Florida. And so I've packed up my house on my own in a wheelchair most of the time, and with friends' help. And I'm going to move 1,600 miles from here to get away from the winters. So
Well,
Oh my
you
goodness.
can do whatever you want to do. It's all in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
you're right. It's the fear is a big obstacle.
I look at it as an adventure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there are lots of things that we are all, well, I think there's great things we are all capable of. But as I said, We just sometimes have to find a creative way to accomplish them. Sometimes it just
Yeah.
takes a little bit longer, and sometimes we just need to take a different road to get there. But I appreciate everybody listening to my presentation and asking questions and just having just a good conversation about the things that were discussed tonight. I really encourage you, if you have not tried any of the support groups, to do Pam's support group on the Tuesdays or mine on the last Wednesday. So I hope that we will see you again in our support groups. Is there anything I'm missing, Becca?
I don't think so. I think we've got it all covered. Thank you so much, Bree, for coming, and thank you all for being with us tonight and listening to us.
Well, thank you, Bree. Thank you, Becca, and everyone who contributed. It was really great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
You also have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.